So, Prince George gets a historic ceremonial title, something reserved for future kings, and the palace puts out this lovely, polished press release about tradition and continuity and the bright future of the monarchy. Sweet, right? Except behind the scenes, Queen Camilla reportedly completely broke down sobbing. Not because she hates Prince George, not because she thinks he doesn't deserve it, but because this title, this specific honor, is something she apparently believed would eventually go to her own grandson, Freddie Parker, B.S. And the way she found out that it wasn't, she read the same press release the rest of us did. No private conversation, no heads up from her husband the king, no courtesy warning from the palace machinery she's been part of for years. Just cold ink and a very clear message. Your family's not part of this. And honestly, that's where the story gets genuinely complicated, because it's not just about one title or one snub. It's about years of quiet maneuvering, unspoken promises, and a fundamental disagreement about what the monarchy is supposed to look like, all coming to a head in one brutal afternoon. So, let's rewind a bit, because you can't really understand why this hit Camilla the way it did without understanding what she's been trying to build for years now. Camilla Rosemary Shan, now Queen Camilla, has spent decades navigating the absolute minefield of royal inclusion. She went from mistress to wife, from scandal to grudging respectability, and her path into the heart of the monarchy has been anything but smooth. And while her position beside King Charles is now secure, her private ambition didn't end with getting the crown. People close to the Queen say she spent years planning something far more personal, seeing her bloodline, her actual descendants woven into the fabric of the institution. Camilla has 2 children from her first marriage to Andrew Parker B.S., Tom and Laura. And unlike Prince William and Prince Harry, they don't have titles. They're not working royals. The firm considers them, and by extension their children, civilians. Camilla's loving grandchildren, sure, but civilians. Camilla, however, has never seen it that way. To her, they're part of her legacy, and in recent years, according to multiple insiders, she's been working very carefully to shift how the institution views them. It started subtly. Strategic invitations to royal events, family photographs, carefully composed. Her grandson, Freddie Parker B.S., who by all accounts is charming and well-mannered and growing up within arm's reach of Windsor, started appearing more frequently at family gatherings, often seated near key royal figures. Many in Camilla's inner circle believe she was positioning him as the acceptable face of her family, the one who could bridge the gap. She was careful about it too. One former courtier said she never outright demanded titles. She just presented her family as deserving of royal respect. The subtext was always there, though. They could serve the monarchy too. At private dinners, at charity events, Camilla was known for bringing up Freddie's accomplishments. She made sure images of her grandchildren appeared in palace newsletters and Christmas greetings. And she quietly suggested, particularly once Charles ascended the throne, that her family deserved a formal place in this new era. According to one retired palace aide, there was even talk completely behind closed doors about possibly pressing for a minor hereditary title for Freddie somewhere down the line. Something ceremonial, symbolic, a barony, maybe nothing that would cause public outcry, but enough to justify Parker B's inclusion in the royal directory. And the aide explained it wasn't about greed, it was about belonging. Camilla knew she'd always be seen as the outsider queen. Elevating her grandchildren was her way of changing that narrative, of saying, we are part of this too, but here's the thing. That quiet campaign for recognition was met with equally quiet resistance. Senior advisors to Prince William were reportedly skeptical from the start. They saw the monarchy as a blood institution founded on lineage, on tradition, on the legitimacy of descent. Camilla had become queen consort, yes, but her children and their children were by definition not royal. And blurring the lines between monarchy and extended privilege, that was a risk they weren't willing to take. The anxiety just simmered behind closed doors. Camilla was pleasant but persistent. She used her rising influence to push for small changes, more inclusion at events, better seating arrangements, subtle nods. And Charles, who was frequently stuck between love and legacy, he indulged some of her hopes. But Charles is not the actual custodian of the future royal image anymore. William is. And according to reports, William had very little interest in expanding the royal family to include step-relatives, no matter how close they were to the king and queen. An insider explained that William sees the future very clearly. A slimmer monarchy, a tighter circle, no room for confusion or court favoritism. And that vision did not include Parker B's grandchildren. So for years, this tension just sat there, Camilla playing the long game, hoping that time and sentiment would eventually create space for her bloodline. And then the title she had quietly hoped Freddie might one day receive was bestowed on Prince George without discussion, without warning, without explanation. And it wasn't just a disappointment, it was a definitive no. For Camilla, who spent her entire adult life clawing her way from controversy to crown, it felt like history repeating itself, a reminder that in the eyes of the monarchy, she would always be a visitor. And her grandchildren, just visitors too. Now, to understand why William and Kate were so firm on this, you have to understand their whole philosophy about the monarchy's future. To the public, William and Kate represent this modern, personable royal couple who balance tradition with accessibility. But behind palace doors, people close to them say their vision is far more strategic and selective than most realize. From the moment they stepped into senior royal positions, the Prince and Princess of Wales have followed one guiding principle. Protect the core royal bloodline, not out of pride or snobbery, but out of a deliberate desire to shield the institution from delusion, from confusion, from endless debate about who counts and who doesn't. An insider said they understand that the monarchy only survives that the public perceives it as sacred, clean, and direct. Blood matters, heritage matters, titles must reflect that. And that's where the unspoken schism with Queen Camilla started growing. Camilla embraced a blended vision of the monarchy, one that featured her Parker BS grandchildren, her civilian children, and the gradual integration of extended family. William and Kate stayed firmly rooted in tradition. Their view was straightforward, maybe a little cold but clear. Only those with direct Windsor ancestry should hold royal titles. It wasn't personal, it was structural. William, as future king, is determined to streamline the monarchy, reduce cost, reduce public scrutiny, reduce excess. His model apparently follows the Scandinavian approach. Fewer working royals, clearer roles, and no ceremonial honors awarded based on personal favoritism or stepfamily connections. So when Camilla would float suggestions about titles or enhanced prominence for her grandchildren, sources say those suggestions were met with opposition and eventually just silence. A former aide explained that William didn't need to argue, he simply didn't respond. He let the stillness speak for itself. And Kate is reportedly equally uncomfortable with the idea of non-royal offspring getting formal honors. Not because she dislikes Camilla's family, but because she sees the optics. In an era where the monarchy is under constant scrutiny, any move that could be interpreted as nepotism or favoritism would be a public relations disaster. So this moment when Prince George received that long-awaited ceremonial title, it marked the end of a very long road, a public declaration of the monarchy's future direction. And that direction belongs to the Windsor, the Mountbatten Windsors, not the Parker BS.
Several staff members have indicated that William knew exactly how Camilla would react to the announcement. He made no effort to cushion the blow. Others say he felt it was better to be direct now rather than string her along with false hope. A source put it plainly.
William isn't cruel, but he isn't sentimental either, especially when it comes to the crown. He knows what he's protecting. So, while the public celebrated Prince George's transition into a more official role, Camilla was reportedly in tears inside the royal residence because for her, it wasn't just about George receiving the honor, it was about her grandson not receiving it. And William had made his position crystal clear. Blood over blended, legacy over sentiment. The monarchy's future would not be shared. And right in the middle of all this sits King Charles. In a kingdom built on hierarchy and heritage, he finds himself in this impossible position. Stuck between the woman he loves and the son who will succeed him. Charles is seen publicly as a stabilizing force after years of royal turmoil. But inside palace walls, this decision to give Prince George that ceremonial title over Camilla's grandson revealed something deeper. Charles may wear the crown, but William now controls the future. And that future does not include the Parker BS family. According to senior insiders, Camilla had long relied on Charles's support in her quiet campaign to elevate her family. She'd express her wishes privately, never with demands, just hopes, a baron for Freddie, perhaps some formal recognition of her grandchildren's close connection to the royal family. And Charles, ever the diplomat, would nod and offer reassuring words. "We'll find the right moment," he reportedly told her several times. But when the moment actually came to make a decision about this ceremonial honor, Charles was at a crossroads: give in to Camilla's request and risk alienating William, or support his heir and devastate his wife. In the end, the king chose the crown, as many believe he always has. Sources close to the matter say Charles hesitated. He even floated the idea of creating some lower title for Freddie Parker BS as a compromise. But William was unmoved. He didn't see granting titles to step-G grandchildren as a compromise at all. He saw it as a contaminant, a slippery slope toward a distorted royal image that could haunt future generations. And Charles, who has fought his entire reign for the stability of a modern monarchy, eventually gave in. A palace insider confirmed he didn't want to fight, but he also understood that William's vision had to be respected. If Charles defied him, he'd be starting a war inside the institution. The decision shattered something. Those close to the king and queen say Camilla experienced it as a personal betrayal, not from William, but from Charles himself. For a woman who had supported him through decades of scrutiny, media attacks, and family rejection, this felt like a knife from her own husband. She reportedly asked him, "Did you even try?" One staff member allegedly overheard the exchange. Charles was said to be sorry, but not apologetic. He believed he'd made the right decision for the institution, for the crown, for history. But the emotional cost was real. Camilla reportedly canceled several commitments in the days following the announcement. Staff noticed a shift in her demeanor, quiet, distant, noticeably cold. And Charles unusually didn't press her because he knew what he'd done. For the first time since their marriage, Camilla no longer felt safe with the man who had once defied the world to be with her. The king is no stranger to difficult choices, but sources believe this one will leave a lasting mark because the cost wasn't political. It was human, and no royal decree can fix a heart that feels expendable. For Camilla, the crown had always represented proof that her past didn't define her. But now with her grandson passed over and her legacy rejected, she's left wondering if she ever really belonged at all. The event itself was supposed to be modest, a solemn royal occasion to bestow a ceremonial title on young Prince George, one that's been passed down through generations and signifies royal maturity and future leadership. For the public, it was a charming glimpse into the future king's destiny. For the palace, a media win amid mounting pressures. But for Camilla, it was devastating. And the detail that makes it so much worse is that she reportedly had no advance notice. Despite her proximity to the throne, despite decades of service and discretion, she learned through the official palace news release, same as the general public. She didn't even get a phone call. One insider said she saw the name Prince George in that announcement and just froze. To outsiders, it looked like a natural evolution. But to Camilla, it confirmed what had been quietly building for months. Her family would always be secondary, and her grandchildren would never be allowed near the heart of the royal machine. That night, behind closed doors at Clarence's house, Camilla reportedly lost hold of the composed image she'd spent years cultivating. She sobbed, not in public, not in front of cameras or staff, but alone in her private sitting room with only a few loyal aides nearby. An eyewitness account says she held the printed announcement and said, "They have erased us after everything they have erased us." It wasn't just sadness, it was outrage, betrayal, a deep piercing grief that no crown could cover. Camilla spent decades walking a tightrope, earning respect, staying silent, serving a family that once rejected her. She survived public hatred, media venom, private humiliation to get where she is, but all that was for her, not her kids, not her grandchildren. And now a line had been drawn. Prince George on one side, heir-favored, celebrated, Freddie Parker BS on the other, invisible. According to reports, what hurt most was the message. The title sent that Queen Camilla had no say, that her opinions, her hopes, her wishes for her family were irrelevant. One courtier described the mood in the palace that evening as tense and surreal. Everybody felt it. You could hear it in the silence. The Queen had been shut out, and the Queen was grieving. King Charles reportedly tried to comfort her. He offered gentle explanations, likely rehearsed in advance, about tradition, public expectation, royal strategy, but Camilla, overcome, reportedly told him, "You let them humiliate me," she cannoned. The official reason was health concerns, but people inside the royal circle understood. The Queen wasn't ill, she was shattered. No one would speak about it publicly, but the staff witnessed the aftermath. Camilla emotionally distant, Charles concerned, and the relationship between the Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales deteriorating further, because Camilla saw this as more than routine. It was personal. She had climbed every rung of the royal ladder, endured every wound, every whisper, every insult. She wore the crown, but in a quiet moment she realized something devastating. The crown could never protect her loved ones, and the monarchy would never truly accept them. When the dust started to settle from all that emotional chaos, royal insiders began focusing on what this title stub actually means, not just for Camilla, but for the whole future of the monarchy. Because while everyone was focused on Camilla's tears and Prince George's new title, something much bigger was taking shape beyond the palace gates, a generational divide. On one side, the future, a sharper, streamlined House of Windsor. Prince William, Catherine, and their children being carefully shaped into a more cohesive, modern royal core, one that embodies tradition, clarity, and public relatability. On the other side stands the Parker BS family, what some now called the blended branch, loyal, present, yet unofficial. Accepted in photographs, but not in protocol. Camilla's side of the tree wasn't pruned exactly, it was just disregarded. And that exclusion carries the seeds of a bigger crisis. One royal historian put it like this: "You're seeing two royal visions begin to diverge." Camilla wanted to build a legacy that included her family. William is building one that strips away everything except the bloodline. And both believe they're right. The implications are significant. A monarchy that may one day be divided not by scandal or abdication, but by a slow, painful fragmentation of family identity. Freddie Parker BS and his relatives aren't little kids anymore. They're growing up in royal settings, but without royal titles. They walk through palace corridors, but aren't listed in royal registries. They celebrate holidays with George, Charlotte, and Louis, but the message is unmistakable. This world is not yours. What does that mean for the next generation? It means a monarchy increasingly defined by hierarchy, not just of power, but of belonging. Prince George is already taking on duties that foreshadow his future: honors, military patronages, informal introductions to diplomatic circles. He's being raised not just as a grandson, but as a sovereign. Meanwhile, Camilla's grandchildren remain on the periphery of public awareness. No honors, no mentions, not even a whisper of ceremonial participation. They belong to the Queen's world, but not the monarchy's future. Some argue this separation is necessary, that the monarchy must focus, slim down, eliminate excess to survive in the modern era. Others warned that this segmentation, this quiet exile of step relatives, could breed an undercurrent of resentment that deepens over time. One source wondered aloud, what happens when Freddie keeps seeing stories about George's promotions, knowing he was once considered for similar recognition? They're not children forever, a former royal press officer noted, And feelings don't disappear just because the palace chooses silence. For now, William's approach appears to be working. The public adores his children. The image of a pure, steadfast royal bloodline is powerful, but palace insiders say the emotional toll of that clarity, especially on those left behind, may one day surface in ways no one can predict. Camilla feels the pain immediately. For her grandchildren, it might take longer. But either way, a line has been drawn. One that goes beyond titles and honors, reaching into hearts and across generations. The monarchy's future will be entirely Windsor-centric. The question is what that purity costs. A family divided permanently. For Queen Camilla, the crown was never really about personal glory. It was about redemption. After years of being ridiculed by the public, whispered about in corridors, blamed for one of the most notorious love triangles in royal history, she fought fiercely for a place at the heart of the monarchy. And she got it, but she could never have predicted that the same institution she fought her way into would quietly close the door on her family. Camilla had hoped her grandchildren would benefit from her sacrifice. That by wearing the crown with grace and loyalty through decades of conflict and transformation, she might pave the way for her bloodline to earn at least symbolic respect within royal circles. Not equality with the Windsor, never that, but recognition as members of a new modernized royal court. Instead, she was met with silence and then rejection. The ceremonial title given to Prince George was more than a formality. It was a declaration, one that reinforced the monarchy's unwavering commitment to lineage over connection. And in doing so, it shattered years of quiet hope that Camilla had nurtured behind palace walls. Her position is now secure but isolated. She will stand beside King Charles at ceremonial events, smile for photographs, wave from balconies, but she does so knowing her legacy ends with her. That the name Parker B.S. will never be inscribed in royal history. That her grandson will never bow in ceremony, never be announced with grandeur, never carry the weight and honor of a title, even one she would have gladly shared. That pain is one she carries alone. Because in this new royal era, Camilla may wear the crown, but Kate and William shape the throne, and their monarchy makes no room for blended lines or sentimental exceptions. Camilla envisioned the legacy. Instead, she's left with a brutal truth. She may be queen, but her family was never royal.